Imagine a world where the very air you breathe wants to kill you. A land so vicious that simply stepping outside may be a death sentence. Welcome to Catachan, a jungle planet that makes even the hardiest soul rethink their career in the Imperial Guard. Here, survival isn't just an obstacle, it's a daily brutal ritual. In the face of uprooted trees that bleed toxins, colossal scorpion-like insects, and explosive toads that detonate at the sight of danger, life on Catachan is as brutal as any battle. For these Deathworld survivors, jungle warfare isn't just a specialty, it's a way of life. They've earned a fearsome reputation as the deadliest jungle fighters in the entire Imperium. Any guardsman who's ever served with them knows, when things get ugly in the undergrowth, you want a Catachan by your side. But why exactly are these jungle warriors considered unbeatable? Today we go beyond the cliché machete and flak jacket. We'll dive deep into Catachan's lethal ecology, see how every tribe-born child is forged into a trooper, and uncover the legends of their regiments. To put it plainly, on Catachan, the phrase, "nature is as cruel as war," is an understatement. Its dense, steamy jungles and fetid swamps are a green nightmare where every creature and plant has evolved under a single cruel law: kill or be killed. Every native plant on Catachan is saturated with lethal venoms or digestive acids. Some enormous vines drip paralyzing toxins. Others launch razor-sharp seed pods at unsuspecting prey. Spore trees spring from the ground and explode in clouds of choking pollen. Even the soil itself teems with microbes so dangerous that a single touch can let necrotic bacteria burrow into flesh. In Catachan, a single minor scratch can be fatal as necrotic bacteria swarm in to putrefy it. One mist rising from a rotten bog can dissolve lung tissue in minutes. Animals fare no better. The most infamous is the Catachan devil, a colossal insectoid scorpion with jaws the size of a basilisk's, tearing through armor like paper. A single devil emerging from the undergrowth can reduce an unwary guardsman to ragged pieces. Giant drake bats prowl the canopy with leathery wings and snapping jaws. Imagine a pterodactyl the size of an ogren swooping silently down on its prey. Even ogren-sized ungors glow with internal enzymes that vaporize them in a flash if you get too close. Some creatures literally explode with toxic fury. The greater barking toad is deceptively calm until you startle it. Then it detonates in a cacophony of neurotoxic slaughter, spewing an acid gas that can obliterate anyone within hundreds of meters. Forget grenades. This amphibian is a walking bomb. On every rock, thorn, and vine exists a hidden threat. Strangle plants lurk unseen, their vine-like tendrils wrapping around unwary passers-by to slowly crush them. Spitting cacti flick toxin-coated spines like harpoons. There are even small carnivorous flora, like bloodroot, that leap up and drown a man in thorns. The jungle on Catachan doesn't just hide predators in shadows, it actively reaches out to snatch you. The threat isn't limited to jungle creatures. Microbes and parasites lurk in every mist and drop of water. Jungle fog can carry enough parasitic spores to corrode armor. The famous Catachan foot rot is a fungus that festers on the skin and will literally eat a man's feet away if left untreated. Mosquitoes in these jungles carry exotic poxes. A single mosquito bite can deliver a disease that will kill a normal human within days. Even drinking from the local streams is a gamble. The water tastes sweet, but can harbor lethal, flesh-eating amoebas. Most Catachans will tell you they fear disease more than any plant or monster, because here biology itself is out to kill you at every turn. Settlements on Catachan are few and heavily fortified. Humans have had to carve out clearings and stone fortresses just to hold back the jungle. Vibrant green vines regularly find a way into bunkers and huts, secreting acids that eat through metal plating. Tanks become tombs when the jungle suffocates them. Vines can crush a chimera's tracks and choke off its crew in days. Fortresses are ringed by incendiary trenches and minefields, and still they must be rebuilt every season as the forest relentlessly reclaims the ground. It's said that the jungle will counter-assault any human fortification just to prove the ecosystem is boss. Catachan barely sustains itself, so its human tithe to the Imperium is, in effect, the planet's greatest export. Every year, countless hunters and woodsmen are gathered and sent off-world as new regiments of the Astra Militarum. It's said that if you collected every guardsman with jungle blood, they could raise dozens of fresh Catachan regiments each year alone. The few factories on Catachan mostly just preserve rare jungle samples and brew crude narcotics. Everything else comes from imperial supply lines. In essence, the Empire pays for Catachan's existence by trading resources, biospecimens, exotic toxins, and the soldiers themselves for food and equipment. Where most death worlds struggle to support life, Catachan trades it all away. In short, this is hell on Rin's world, a place where survival feels like a cruel cosmic joke, and yet it's exactly here that the Catachan jungle fighters are forged. The living legends of Catachan don't emerge from parade grounds. They emerge bleeding from the very soil. Each clue to their toughness lies in their home. Next, we'll step off-planet and explore how that brutal upbringing transforms children into the deadliest soldiers in the galaxy. On Catachan, you don't undergo boot camp. You survive infancy. Birth rates are low because 50% of all Catachan children don't survive past their first birthday. Of the remainder, barely half make it to age 10. Those who do reach adulthood have already won a Darwinian lottery. You might laugh, but Catachan kids often learn to fire a laser gun before they've learned to walk properly. By the time most children elsewhere are learning to spell, Catachan children are skinning wild groks and planting crude explosives. As one grizzled sergeant put it, they learn to check for exploding spiders before tying their boots. In this crucible, every boy and girl is born a warrior. Childhood on Catachan is about living by your instincts. Kids play mock battles with poisoned darts. They train to hold their breath underwater to avoid amphibian ambushes. They learn early to hunt, fight, and even make grenades from broken machinery. A young child might leap from vines onto a wild catfish in a swamp, because if he fails, he may never feel it again. Every piece of clothing is gear-tested. Shoes have steel caps, so barbed needles and venomous bites don't become permanent souvenirs. Families are tight-knit clans. Young boys fight alongside uncles, aunties, and even their grandpas. These blood bonds build an unparalleled trust. A rite of passage is earning a Catachan name. This isn't a formal ceremony. It's a gangly kid doing something crazy and endearing until a nickname sticks. For example, Gunnery Sergeant Stonetooth Harker got his name after wrestling a half-alive Tyrannid Ravener off a teammate and crushing its skull in his bare hands. Iron Hand Strachan of the 4th Catachan got his when he drilled down enemy lines with a bionic prosthetic arm he built after losing his real one to a shark. In Catachan squads, these nicknames, usually depicting some brutal deed, carry more weight than medals. They remind everyone of the ferocity each man has earned. By necessity, the military culture here is informal and tribal. When Catachan regiments form, they often elect their own sergeants and captains, just like choosing a village elder. It's common to see each squad made up of cousins and close kin. That means loyalty is absolute. A Catachan will literally walk through flame for his brother-in-arms. The one officer they notoriously do not respect is the commissar. It's practically a running joke in the death world. Every commissar assigned to Catachan ends up either quietly quitting or mysteriously missing within a day. The one thing a jungle-born trooper cares about is survival skill, not bureaucratic discipline. They'll adhere to orders only as long as they make sense for staying alive. Still, discipline, in another sense, is ironclad. You won't see medal parades here. Catachans forego fancy uniforms for practicality. Red bandanas tied around their heads symbolize a blood oath. Once you put that cloth on, you've pledged to survive at all costs. Tattoos mark service and kills, no medals needed when you have a dagger inked for every decade of duty. They smear soot on their fatigues so as not to shine like beacons. In combat, they move like ghosts. Cunning and improvisation are honed skills. They joke that if a mission doesn't kill someone, it's probably a vacation by their standards. Pause for effect. Because spending a day in the Imperium's worst death world leaves almost no one complaining about the dangers of other planets. Mental resilience is equally honed. A Catachan laughs in the face of fear, because to them death is just a familiar old friend. Recall how one old trooper put it, "A day in that jungle will show you that the worst place to die is usually right here with me. You're safer up here fighting loss than out there chasing a bull across a swamp." That might sound flippant, but it's born of truth. Their bravado is real, born from knowing they've already cheated death 1,000 times. If you see a guard from Catachan smirking after a firefight, he's not crazy. He's relieved that this one wasn't like home. The phrase gung-ho might have been coined for them. We touched on one cultural quirk. Commissars tend to disappear. Here's another. Hardened veterans are basically meaningless. On Catachan, everyone is a born veteran. Surviving a week in the jungle earns you more respect than years of formal training. When new recruits arrive, they skip basic boot camp and go straight to advanced tactics. If you asked a Catachan sergeant why, he might say, "Why run 'em through drills? They were wrestling crocs for dinner last week." The jungle itself is their training school. They've even worked out the idiosyncrasies of how to fight on their turf. Every squad keeps an arsenal of special tools, chainsaw bayonets, homemade grenades dipped in neurotoxin, primed traps made of anything from hollow tree stumps to severed grox horns. One favorite trick is to tie satchel charges to the backs of dead grox corpses to ambush pursuing Xenos, literally using their rotting bodies as both bait and bomb. Another ploy, cover face and arms with chitin from a dead cave lictor, a tyrannid predator, so that pursuing aliens can't smell or recognize you for years, as actually happened with the 18th Catachan on Coral Cull 8. Thus, the jungle fighter emerges as someone who is both chaotically creative and ruthlessly effective. After all, when you're literally born into a war zone, improvisation is second nature. The motto among Catachans might well be, "If it breathes, we shoot it." They know the meaning of every sharp rock, every splintery plank in that jungle. Any new gear, even a downed Xenos autogun, gets picked apart for parts. When a Catachan steps into combat, it's as if he's bringing a piece of that lethal home turf with him. We'll see how that attitude translates into actual warfare. But first, what kind of weapons do they favor? What does a Catachan bring to a fight? Anything and everything that can kill. Their armory is a wild mix of standard Imperial equipment and jungle ingenuity. At base, they still use laser guns, usually the short Mkh-4 Lascarbine variant, but they prioritize firepower. Every platoon carries flame weapons, heavy flamers, and even melter guns on occasion, because after enduring acid tunnels and steam vents, these men trust burninate checks more than conservative tactics. They slather their bolter ammo with night vision spikes and have more grenades, frag, and melta than most other regiments think safe. They laugh when a fancy gazer shows up because by then they've already cooked Xenos for target practice. Close combat is where they truly shine. No other guardsmen have an arsenal of knives and machetes quite like the Catachans. The most common is the famed Catachan fang, essentially a giant combat kukri up to 20 inches long. A Catachan trooper is rarely seen without one strapped to his side. It's used for clearing brush on patrol and for carving up enemies up close. Some devils, elite close combat squads, carry the 4-foot Devil's Claw sword, hollow-bladed and weighted with mercury in the hilt so it cuts through armor like butter. Even their smaller fighting knives, like the black-coated Night Reaper, are dipped in venom from native plants, so a mere slice leaves a foe screaming before he bleeds out. They'll wink and say it's just giving them a fair chance. If it walks, we drop it, could be a Catachan motto. They also love explosives and heavy weapons. It's almost a rite of passage for a young Catachan to carry a demolition charge on his back. Chains of pipe bombs, strapped grenades turned into satchel mines, improvised flamethrower sprays made from pressure tanks. These are all standard fare. One veteran bragged he once tied a rat carcass to a grenade as bait for his sniper. A more institutional approach. Their tanks and transports tend to have every conceivable specialty gun fitted. Chimera armored transports from Catachan often sport hull-mounted flamers and gyrojet launchers because when something moves faster than a Lehman Russ can aim, you light it up. Their uniforms and vehicles get the jungle treatment too. Camouflage jackets are often reinforced with mesh of actual vines and leaves. Boots have barbed caps so well you can stomp snakes without worrying. Troopers sew venomous plant quills onto their flak jackets as a grim "don't touch me" sign. One legend tells of a sergeant welding a bayonet to his backpack frame to make an improvised riot shield. As for armor vehicles returning from the line, you'll sometimes see a Lehman Russ with machine gun blades bolted onto its turrets, or a Chimera with saplings strapped across the hull for extra cover. A Valkyrie dropship might leave the jungle with heavy foliage glued to its undercarriage to sneak in on enemies. In short, they customize for any advantage. Even their bullets can carry the jungle. Sniper teams sharpen black powder rounds with alchemical toxins so that a single headshot can paralyze the target with adrenaline or nerve poison. Catachan snipers themselves are a breed apart. Stoic marksmen who can lie still in the mud for days, waiting. A common story is that a Catachan sniper once tuned his Laskerbine by resting it atop a fallen lictor's spine to perfectly isolate it, then fired through breath held from Vine of Sleep poison. They're said to hit pinpoints from 800 meters in heavy fog. If the Munitorum issued a line of standard gear, Catachans would tweak it all. A heavy flamer in an Adeptus Mechanicus manual is just a flame toothpick to them. They might replace an imperial-styled bayonet with a 6-foot carved Grok's tusk and quip that it's only slightly off regulation. Any piece that doesn't work, they either fix with duct tape and a nut, or toss it and jury-rig a new one from tree branches. In the jungle, the only rule is survive by any means. In practice, a Catachan unit is like a guerrilla warband on full assault. You'll see lines of demonic white shotgun flashes from hidden pitfall traps. You'll see columns of flame because a trooper happily lobbed a phosphor grenade into the undergrowth. You'll see hand-to-hand ambushes where grunts leap from trees with claws and bayonets out. And wherever possible, the jungle favors them. Their squads lay down no-man's land choke points with tripwire bombs made of grenade fragments and poison needles. They treat battlefields like home turf, vanishing into every shadow, every trench, every alien canopy available. Many commanders learn the hard way that if an entire orc horde is marching across a plain, never send Catachans after them at night. By morning, half the orcs will be gut-shot to bait and waiting to be finished off with flame. It's a different style from line infantry or tank regiments. Yes. For example, a Death Corps unit might prefer massed artillery and trenches. A Tempestus Scion troop loves well-coordinated blitz. But a Catachan would chew through all that with machetes and grin. They make a mockery of staying hidden. As one war-weary captain said, "Let's put it this way. Our idea of cover is smearing myself with lictor blood and cheering." A published sniper tale even notes that in a firefight, a Catachan sniper wouldn't hide under a rock. He would carefully disassemble a tree, light it on fire, stand on its stump, and weave bullets through the smoke. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but it shows the mentality. If you're uncomfortable, you're probably doing it wrong. Equipment aside, the true strength of Catachan units is their human element. And speaking of humans, let's meet some of their most legendary individuals and the regiments they led. In the lore and logs of the Imperial Guard, a few names stand out. Consider Sly Marbo, the so-called one-man army. Officially, he was just Trooper Marbo of the Catachans, but he showed up in more skirmishes than anyone ever documented. Stories claim he once bounced away unharmed from a kill-shot bolter round that would have torn a space marine in half, and then led the charge with nothing but a knife. Regiment histories say he infiltrated 3 enemy camps in a single night to plant bombs dancing on the ceiling rafter because he needed no ladder. Whether all these tales are true, of course, the point is he became a symbol. Other Imperial Guard regiments use Marbo as a kind of boogeyman in their cadences. Be the Marbo means fight like you'll never die. Then there's Gunnery Sergeant Stonetooth Harker, a legend from the 4th Catachan. He earned his name when one recall says he crushed a Tyrannid Ravenaire's neck between his own arms like a vice, grinning the whole time. Rumors say he chews solid chloride crystal simply because he thinks it's a great snack to shred while on watch. The stories are larger than life. He supposedly once stopped an entire mob of rioting orcs by tearing the arm off a mech and using it as a cudgel. These might all be Bard-level exaggerations, but ask any guard squad and they'll trust the core. Harker was one tough bastard. Having someone called Stonetooth at your flank was a massive boost to any unit's morale. Colonel Ironhand Straken of Catachan 4th is another. He survived losing his hand to a shark during a leisure voyage. Yes, there are sharks in Catachan's coastal rivers, and had it replaced with a heavy bionic metallic prosthetic. His regiment, the Iron Hand Regiment, was famous for never taking prisoners, and he even made a custom power fist arm when his metal hand got damaged to punch demons in their face. Reading his files is like reading a legend of old Earth. One campaign report literally says he single-handedly cleared a hive of Crud by brawling with their queen while under heavy gunfire. Stuff of myth but written down in black and white in regimental logs. More recent names add to the legend. A Black Library novel, Catachan Devil, introduced Colonel Haskell Hellfist Aldon, leading the 57th Jungle Fighters. He's basically an 80s action movie poster come to life. Tanks heaved grenades. He just ran up and started punching holes in them. His entire approach was stripped-down Rambo with no cover, and he somehow won his campaign. Another novel, Deathworlder, follows Major Wolf Khan of the 903rd Night Shrikes doing something even crazier. Holding one of the last planets in the galaxy against crashing Tyrannid swarms in a jungle just as deadly as home. But even that said, Khan's tactics mirror exactly what any Catachan would do. She even taught her troopers to slide down vines to ambush aliens. And we can't forget regimental nicknames that hint at their stories. The Sesvinti, Screaming Devils, the Exviate, Swamp Rats, the Fwafofo, Waiting Death. The Swamp Rats became famous on Coral Call 8 by covering themselves in dead tyrannid tissue to blend in, just to prove a point, and still came back mostly unscathed. The Savaint Skoyatel even have a drinking chant about enduring filth for glory. The Sishavintam has an active fan club for its crack sniper named Del, who once won the Imperial Marksmanship Contest 7 years in a row. The 24th, by contrast, earned their name waiting patiently in ambush to deadly effect. Even on famous battlefields, Catachan units delivered. In the Third War for Armageddon, Commissar Yarrick insisted the jungle Catachans take on underground orc commandos, because any other guardsmen in those tunnels would freak out. The Catachans basically treated the orc underground like a beat cop's night shift, calling it a soothing stroll. In the Indomitus Crusade, when the massive warp phenomenon over Catachan tore the planet apart, the first thing the Space Marine reinforcements found was a couple of Catachan squads calmly mopping up demons that had come through, so effective that the Marines just took over the cleanup. All these tales could seem unbelievable, but in every corner of the Imperium, guardsmen have a grudging respect. They know if their platoon ever hits the fan and a Catachan sergeant rolls in, the battle will quickly tilt back toward victory. In fact, legend has it that children in some frontier worlds grow up hearing Catachans mentioned right up there with angels of death or space marine heroes, a way to inspire courage by saying, if the jungle men can do it, so can you. They aren't genetically enhanced. They don't have psychic implants. They survive through pure instinct and toughness. And to others, that makes them almost mythic. Speaking of comparisons, how do Catachans stack up against other Imperial Guard forces? Well, it depends on the mission. Put them in their favorite environment. Thick jungle, lethal swamps, flora-choked ruins, and they outrank everyone else. In those worlds, one Catachan is literally said to be worth at least 10 guardsmen from other regiments. That's no exaggeration in the lore. Codices note that Imperial High Command often notes how many Catachans are needed to equate a single Cadian with trench rifles. The Emperor's finest codex line even jokes, "First, clear the dangers. Next, send the Catachans." By contrast, a Kasserkin colonel might prefer icy fortresses or tech-savvy job. Put those disciplined, perfect tactical operators in Catachan's reign, and they'd wilt, scanning for exits. An aerial drop on a city would suit Catachans less, because they love thick air and murky vines, not open rooftops. The death course of Krieg would survive, they survive everything. But in swamp warfare, a Catachan laughs them under the table. Even space marines tiptoe around Catachan. Rumor says salamanders prefer cave voyages to Catachan's heat. They trust fire, but even they admit this planet is next level. Some joke that the Raven God once tried to assassinate a Catachan, simply to see if he would bleed to death. He did not, just killed more would-be assassins. They nearly fragged their chaplain. Imagine a scale of toughness. Catachan are way over the limit. The only time the Imperium asks if anything is too dangerous is when someone suggests bringing orphans. And when that's said, a Catachan sighs and waves his hand. "Vacancies closed, boys. We got this." Indoor assault missions, they turn them down, literally asking to be transferred to the jungle. One captain is said to have called an underground mission a spa day and demanded immediate jungle duty. In fact, the faint hope of an indoor mission is a demotion to a Catachan trooper. They'll grumble if someone swaps their bolter for a laser pistol, or if you dare serve them office coffee instead of rum. And yet, Whenever the Imperium has a planet on fire, guess which job posting always gets filled first? Jungle experts. Because the generals know Catachans bleed like few others and love it. If you hear that an elite drop troop has more casualties on a Deathworld than a fresh Catachan squad, you know who's going to tell that story at the bar later. They are, as one log reads, the most uncomplaining, determined, and valorous soldiers the Guard has. No complaint if they get lost, shot, or stung. After all, they feel at home. In the finest tradition, they never ask for easy jobs. One colonel once said, "Give me an orc pit any day over a fucking conference room." In summary, no other soldiers carry their confidence the way Catachans do. Discipline, equipment checks, salon shiny helmets, that's not them. Their superiority is raw, forged in mud and pain. An imperial tactician might avoid chaos, psychic storms, but you bet your last wafer they'll write down Catachan on any regression game space where the scribbles read swamp, mountain, or hell, because they know what those scribbles mean. Natural traps. Across the galaxy, death comes in many forms: laser fire, psychic horror, traitor blade. But for the Catachans, death is as ordinary as sunrise. They have seen it, breathed it, survived it since childhood. You might wonder how they stack up next to the rest of the Astra Militarum. In most technical fields, say navigating asteroid belts or hacking void comms, they probably wouldn't top the class. But in the raw, bloody task of surviving an ambush in dense jungle, they make anyone else look like raw recruits. They outmatch trained Kasurkin by 50 meters, deride Admech with a grunt and a cunning jury rig. They make the noble guardsman wish he had even 1/10 of their stamina. If the Imperial Guard had a report card, Catachan's column would read physical strength 120%, endurance 240%. Chances of any camouflage fooling them, 0%. Imperium generals have an unspoken motto: if it bleeds, send Catachans. Indeed, they get the first call on anything labeled Deathworld. Any last posted call for jungle expertise will have a red dot on Catachan on the map. Even the Emperor's own notes, in leaked strategy cards, quietly recognize them as premier Deathworld infantry. Every guardsman on a clean planet with terraforming wants to make them last-word jokes. Everyone who served with them will secretly ask to swap squads before a swamp mission. If you've ever questioned why Catachans are so mythologized, consider their flip side. They proudly lack nothing genetically, technologically, or mystically. They're plain humans born without power armor. Their lives haven't been given back by the Emperor's Promethean by auguries or psychic wards. They've simply endured. That flat, staggering fact makes them extraordinary. In grim, dark 40k, where so many miracles are manufactured, real surviving miracles stand out. Think of the last time someone underestimated a guardsman. Now, or imagine if he spent his childhood wrestling snakes for breakfast. Then you'll understand Catachan, contempt for doubters. Perhaps the ultimate tribute comes from their enemies. Rumor has it, even orc commando units have a slang term for a single man who fought them off alone: Marbo. So would you answer the jungle's call? These fearless sons and daughters of Catachan did long ago. They awoke to find themselves on one of the harshest planets in the galaxy, and without regret built a home in those horrors. They will charge into any horror with a grin and a bar of homemade Catachan chocolate, rumored to be molten promethium mixed with crushed nutshells, in hand. And if you ever asked one what the world's name means in High Gothic, he'd spit and grin. "Doesn't matter. I make it mean death for our enemies." They've earned their fangs and scars in the fire of absolute adversity. If the Emperor judged humanity on a curve, Catachans would top the class. We could talk for hours about every brave action or grim joke told around their campfires. But the bottom line is clear. On Catachan, the rank of toughest isn't given. It's survived. In the eyes of the Imperium's higher-ups, a Catachan regiment is the ultimate jungle tiebreaker. Any operation in swamps or rainforests is almost a guaranteed Catachan task. Other guardsmen will admit, sometimes sheepishly, that if space permits, they'd rather have a jungle fighter watching their rear than fresh-faced cadets. Imperium strategists will use any code word they like, but everyone knows, once it gets green, you send Catachans. That's Catachan, Hell's finest. The answer to the question, who are the toughest fighters of them all? Every scar, every burnt patch of uniform is earned. Each Catachan's grin in the face of doom is real. They don't have power armor or psychic gifts, but they'll tell you, we're born killers, and we know it. So salute these jungle warriors. If you can afford to stand there, their legend grows with every campaign, and their crucible is only getting hotter. In the end, it all comes down to one cold fact of Warhammer 40k. Give the jungle to Catachan, and they will survive it.